Hey everyone, this is Jason with Inside Cool Music Magazine, and I am honored today to speak with the incomparable Mark Wood, electric violinist, Emmy-winning composer, founding member of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, educator and creator of Electrify Your Symphony music education program, inventor and founder of Wood Violins. So much, Mark. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, pretty much, I think anybody who plays a stringed instrument, who's a music educator, or really who just loves music, pretty much knows your basic story. So I'd like to forego the basics and kind of get right into it. We'll skip the scales and we'll just start soloing. How's that sound?
I love it. Love it.
Now, last time we spoke, you made a great statement about your place as a musician. You said you, quote, fit into the middle of a hurricane between rock and classical, which was great. So basically, you don't believe in doing things as they've always been done. You have, reinvented the violin and reinvented music education through your EYS program. And you said your heroes are anyone who thinks outside the box and goes beyond the concept of their intended mission. People like Steve Jobs, Pablo Picasso, Igor Stravinsky. So, why do you believe that? And why is that an important belief?
Jason, that's a great question because not everybody thinks like that.
Mhm.
Musicians, there are musicians who are gigging musicians, Broadway, they're doing weddings, they're doing things. They don't want to disrupt anything. They don't want the groom or the bride is coming down and you have some heavy metal dude coming in playing Ozzy Osbourne. They're not going to hire that person. So conformity is fascinating to me. Everybody's the same, cookie cutter, conformity. That, for some reason, and Jason, I wasn't taught this way. Didn't think in terms that it's ingrained in my DNA when I was in like kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And the teacher would go, "All right, everybody, we're all going to do this." My instincts were always like, I don't want to do what everybody's doing. I want to do my own thing. And much to the chagrin of the teacher and all of my classes, Mark was always had to do it his way. And it was never about an ego. It was never about, well, I could do it better. It was just an instinctual thing as why don't we just do something different than what everybody else is doing? So it's really ingrained. My brothers think differently than I do. It wasn't necessarily a family environment, but for some reason, I really needed to be the disruptor everywhere I go, disruptor. And in art, Stravinsky, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, my heroes, and of course, there are a long list of disruptors, including Beethoven, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles were disruptors. They were so powerful. The power. It's really about power. And with art, which is so great, which you and I agree about, we can't describe why is it that the first notes of the Beethoven Fifth Symphony or the middle of Rite of Spring or Sergeant Pepper's, why was that an impact? I really can't verbalize it, but I know that there's something here that is so unique and so immensely inspiring to me. Whereas if I listen to, a band or a piece of art that looks sort of like a similar to other things, I have no interest in that.
Mhm.
I need to be pushed off of my thinking of what is normal, what is mainstream, what is acceptable. Some things are not acceptable. As you know, in the classical world, man, those walls are thick as
Right.
far as what is acceptable. Now, remember in Paris, Stravinsky and Debussy and Ravel, I mean, they were creating, and Berlioz certainly were creating such cutting edge music that, of course, the story of Rite of Spring, everyone's throwing tomatoes at Igor
Right.
Stravinsky. How dare you, do that to Igor? So there's always a pushback. Of course, that's the excitement, but sometimes it's not as exciting and fun when you're trying to be bold,
Mhm.
trying to be irreverent, maybe. And in art, I think that that's where we shine. Humans is the irreverence and the boldness.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you teach that, you know, um, to your students your Electrify Your Symphony program. Just in case anyone has never heard of it, can you give us kind of the 30-second elevator pitch? And then I'd like to talk a little bit about what you had to do because of COVID lockdown for that program. And now that we're coming out of COVID, hopefully, fingers crossed, how are you moving on from there?
Absolutely. And the Electrify Your Symphony for almost 25 years, when I was performing with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a string teacher came up to me and asked me to form a Trans-Siberian Orchestra in her high school. And from Juilliard on, schools, four walls, sounded like a prison school. So
Yep.
for me to return back into that, and of course, the second I walked in, it's like, oh, this is where I need to be with teenagers, not as much college students, but teenagers at that moment were up for anything. And I was
Right.
like, oh, really? Okay, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. So that redefined it, and 25 years later, we have dozens and dozens and dozens of rock orchestras, electric ensembles that partner with our classical heritage. Jason, we spoke about, Mark, you're so radical and this and that. My technique, my ears, my discipline, it all came from my classical training.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never about, well, I'm pushing this all of a sudden, I'm going to reinvent the way, this and that. The most traditional things sometimes are the most useful, so we'd never throw away something that's actually a benefit to our playing. So
Right.
it was never that. It was expressing who Mark was. When we go to the school, so Electrify Your Symphony, we're traveling around the world. Poland, Australia, Europe, United States. In our heyday, which was right before the pandemic, we were doing 150 schools a year. And I'm flying around the country. I'm in hotels, I'm renting cars, airports, school, performance, 2-day workshop. Come on, kids, we got a rock concert tomorrow night. We can do it. We have 24 hours to do something that is historic. And I tell them about that. Why are we doing this, Mark? This is a moment where we can actually redefine the way people think. And with students and schools and education, that to me is everything. It's not just learning the basics of reading and writing and the basic concepts, but in art, we should not be ever really only taught what was done.
Right.
We must be taught, well, now that we've learned about this wonderful 400-year heritage of classical music and string playing, that's awesome celebration. I'm playing in tune. I know how to hold my bow. I got it. Okay, now what do we do? I don't know. Play some weddings and play Pachelbel's canon for the
Yeah.
rest of your life. What? No way, man! I can play pretty good. I can get around my Stravinsky and Bartok and classical music. But now, what does Mark do, or what does a musician do, is really where everything happens. And when I talk to the students, the first thing we do actually is we talk to each other. I ask them to do 30 seconds of your story. Who are you? Where do you live? Who are your influences? Tell me about yourself verbally. After we go through that, I say, now tell me about yourself through your music. And that's when all of a sudden the sheer terror comes on their faces and they're like, what does that mean? Well, check this out. I'm going to play for you and I'm going to show you who I am, but I'm not going to use words. I'm going to use music. And you're going to get an impression of me and I'm going to improvise. And by the way, when I'm finished improvising for 60 seconds, don't ask me to play it again because I will never be able to play it. What you just heard me improvise never exists in the world at that moment. So understand the powerful ambiguity, spontaneity, and beauty of just spur of the moment thinking. And in the music world, of course, it exists in rock and jazz and hip hop and African music and Indian music. The only place it does not exist is in our classical world. And that's absolutely fine. God bless them all. But that wasn't me at all.
Right. And I love how, if you watch any of the videos about what you do, you get the kids up out of their chairs, sometimes out of the classroom, and they're waving their bows around and they're dancing and moving. And
Jason, you know what
so great.
Get rid of the music stand. What?
Exactly.
Get rid of the music stands. I said, what band have you ever seen with music stands? The Foo Fighters, the Led Zeppelin.
Right.
They don't have music stands up, man.
Right.
So 99% of the world, Jason, understand this, 99% of the world function as musicians. Indian music, African, Celtic music is not done with notation.
Hmm.
You know, it's notated, of course, and I, of course, I love notation.
Right.
But the world functions from Billy Joel to Led Zeppelin to Miles Davis to jazz to hip hop. No, they don't notate this when they're working. They're doing it by ear.
Right.
And that is really where it changed my life when I worked with musicians. And Mark, play something for me. Show me what you can do. And I'm like, uh, I can play a scale. You went to Juilliard, Mark, and you can't play one note of your own? And boy, that hit me like a ton of bricks.
I bet.
That changed everything.
So when COVID hit, obviously schools were closed.
Yeah.
So the kids weren't there. You couldn't go there. So you had to modify your program and go online, correct? And that probably was difficult because you're all about interaction. So it's not as easy when you're online. How did that work? Did you figured out how to make it work, didn't you?
Yes, it was 48 hours of fetal position under the bed. Like everybody, I was like,
Right.
what? We're stuck in Arizona, and where were we? Phoenix. We had a big concert the next day, and the rehearsal was that day. Big concert with band, choir, orchestra. We had been rehearsing, we'd been doing all sorts of stuff, gone. And then in 48 hours, the entire year's bookings were up in the air,
Right.
and then canceled, of course, eventually. So after we recovered from the reality that every small business, because remember, we have employees, I have an assistant, we have 10 employees building my violins. I mean, I didn't want to lay off any of them because that would shut down my business.
Right.
But the educational outreach was really disappointing because we started to see how teachers were challenged beyond words. And then we had the summer camp happening in 3 months, which was live in Kansas City for 10 years, and we couldn't do it live. What are we going to do? So we developed this wonderful platform that was actually, I'm guessing maybe 25%, Jason, is now going to be used forever in my
Really?
system. Zoom. There were certain things that we could do when we isolated the students a little bit,
Hmm.
and they were in their room. Some were in a classroom with social distancing with masks on. So we really had to devise an invigorating, exciting, motivating moment on a screen. And it was a total success. And
That's
then the year started in September. I was like, oh boy, are we going to have to do this for schools? And then in the last 6 months, from January to about May, we connected with about 120 schools, and we focused on the YouTube videos. That's our concert. We can't be in a concert hall. So
Right.
we're going to put a camera on you. And by the way, kids, you've been doing it on social media, on TikTok and Instagram for
Right.
years. So I'm sure this is not something that's totally new. And Jason, 10 years ago, if this happened, without Zoom and without the
Right.
ability of social media, oh,
Just be
forget, I have
gone.
no idea
Right.
how we've done it. But with TikTok and social media and these kids being really, really savvy more than us of filming themselves, I said it's exactly like that. But what we
Hmm.
need you to think about is it's your audience. And by the way, you can do several takes. You can do it, play it 10 times, film it 10 times, and get the best performance where when we do it live and we're doing my song, and if it's not up to par, we are not stopping and doing
Right.
it over again. We're going on. So it was an interesting moment for us to say, okay, how much polishing can you do, students, to make that level 10, the highest level of mastery of the instrument? Because if you're a level 5 in a live situation, you're being blended with other players who are slightly better than you.
Hmm.
So you can sort of hide behind it. You don't have to work as hard. All right, I hit a wrong note. All right, I hit it. This is a little out of tune. Whatever. The kid next to me is a little bit better. He's covering up for my mistakes. That is a live situation. You cannot hide on video solo. So we did workshops, performance workshops. We did choreography. We talked to the kids about this is your audience right here,
Hmm.
the camera. And they understood that. And you can't sit there like a lump
Right.
sawing. Kids, look at this video of this kid being bored. Oh yeah, yeah, no, 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 none of that. How can you get dolled up? Get a nice shirt on. Exude a personality. What does that mean? Oh well,
Right.
guess what? You have a personality and a story that's different than everybody. How do we get that out of your instrument and out of your voice? So that was a really big. So we did I think it was 8,500 students in
Wow.
5 months. I had 10 workshops a day. So we were able to help these incredible teachers who were struggling. How are the teachers? You know, a lot of the string programs we lost and teachers
Right.
just quit.
Yep. And students
I'm
quit their
retiring
instruments
or I'm
too.
quitting.
A lot of students I
Yeah,
know quit. They didn't want
it
to
was
do over Zoom, maybe,
it was a
every day.
catastrophe.
Yep.
Yeah, Jason, it was a catastrophe.
Absolutely.
um, that could have been even worse if we didn't come in. And the accolades that we had from the parents and the teachers, thank you for it, because my kid would have stopped playing
Right.
if we didn't have this, because we couldn't do it much in the classroom and no concerts. So it was really successful. Now, as we're going back to normal, we're providing a video experience for the kids, a master class before I even come, so that they can get revved up. And then we come in and they do the live concert. We film the concert, stream the concerts, and they're always talking about the visual performance of our work. And
Mhm.
that's where we're separating ourselves very unconsciously, not on purpose. But the traditional orchestra setting is not set up the way we are setting it up.
Mhm.
We are disrupting that whole industry. We have everybody facing forward. The orchestra's not in an oval with a conductor.
Ah,
We've removed the conductor. The teachers are actually playing their instruments in the orchestra, but everybody faces forward and everybody's standing up except our cellos. And the kids, and I tell them constantly, who are you playing to? Are you
right.
playing to that music stand? That music stand does not like you, nor does it care about you, nor is it going to applaud you. It is in the way. So why don't we do this? And some programs actually memorize the entire program, and that's awesome.
Right.
But some of the kids are nervous about memorizing, so I lower the music stands. Everybody lower the music stand. I don't want to see anything, and I need eye contact. When you have repetition, you have 8 bars of the same rhythmic pattern, memorize it.
Mhm.
It helps your brain activity. It helps everything. And while you're memorizing, I want eye contact. When I walk over to you, I want you to look me right in the eye and play.
Mhm.
Now that's a very interesting scenario that does not exist in the traditional symphony orchestra.
Mhm.
Our peripheral vision is watching the conductor,
Mhm.
but pretty much our eyes are watching all those complicated notation.
Right.
So if someone says, Mark, we got to memorize the rite of spring. I ain't doing that. So with American music styles outside of classical music, let's explore this concept of memorization, eye contact. I bring out assorted students every song, and they are performing alongside of me. And I constantly remind them, who are you playing to? See that person way out in the balcony? We're playing for that person. If you cannot connect with that person, guess what? That person falls asleep.
Right.
That person leaves the concert before it's over, and they're not cheering you. So we need to activate that audience participation that exists in other styles of music.
Great. And I was going to ask what you took away from COVID. As you said, you are incorporating some of that online
Yeah.
YouTube aspect. Now, just a little teaser here. I know that you're also working on a television show that incorporates the program, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
can you tell
Jason,
us anything about that?
well,
Just a
what's
little bit?
really interesting, the pandemic was the ultimate disruptor
Yes.
of all industries, from real estate to television. Out of nowhere, Netflix becomes the biggest supplier of content on TV because we ain't going to the movie theater. All of a sudden, it disrupted that. So that was a really interesting moment to see, and the kind of disruption that we had in the music industry really changed everything. So we are now shopping my TV show not to CBS and NBC anymore
Mhm.
because they are not relevant.
Right.
So we're now going to Hulu, we're going to Apple TV, and we're streaming more than doing theater stuff or television stuff. So we're looking at possibly owning the streaming service and remaining ownership and just partnering with a platform. So we'll let you know. It's going to be great.
Fantastic. Yes, keep us informed. That's fantastic. Now, one thing I've always been interested in is, really a child's kind of social, emotional wellness. I think it's really kind of inherent in music. Learning and playing an instrument has nothing but benefits, and yet, music programs are typically the first things cut when a school is under financial stress. As someone who does what you do, education and as a professional musician, why should we be concerned about that as a
Oh,
society or as parents?
thank you, Jason. That is the epicenter of our conversation. Now, remember, the pandemic also initiated conversation about our educational system.
Hmm.
How do we evaluate? How do we evaluate the word diversity?
Hmm.
How do we evaluate that in an orchestra setting where we're playing pretty much European, not all the time, but most of the time it's composers who lived in Europe, where there's very little diversity brought in to symphony orchestras
Hmm.
and to the school music program. So um, that I was hallelujah. Let's have this conversation. So the most important thing for parents and teachers to understand, and musicians understand it, but the way we talk about it is this: music is the fastest conductor and connector with our emotions.
Hmm.
Faster than movies and art. I mean, when you're watching a movie, it takes time to develop a story for you to
Hmm.
commit to understanding the storyline, and all of a sudden you can weep to it. You are not weeping from the first film, from the first frame of the film. It takes a while for the story to unfold. Music is instantaneous. We have scientific research on this.
Right.
So that fascinates me to know, and of course that's why I get goosebumps.
Right.
Goosebumps, what is that? Watching a movie, we're activating different parts of our brain. But when your eyes are closed and you're listening to Mahler's Second Symphony, which was my goosebump moment, or
Hmm.
listening to a Jimi Hendrix solo, that's my goosebump moment. Listening to Sgt. Pepper's, listening to John Lennon's voice, listening to a great violin player in classic world or jazz. How do I explain? I have no clue
Hmm.
why that's clicking. Why does someone? My wife is listening to Mahler Second, and she's waiting for it to end. She has no connection to that. But I said to her when I first met her, I said, "Watch, I can cry in front of you. Watch." And I put on that slow movement of the Mahler Second, and I'm just weeping. Why is that? I have no clue, but how cool is that? So when I talked to my parents in the audience, I said, ladies and gentlemen, your kids are not going to be crying in baseball. They're not going to cry in football, but we allow them to explore their emotions in music. So the
Right.
emotional content, and also, Jason, part of my lecture series that I go around and talking to schools and businesses, creative and emotional intelligent development is
Hmm.
critical. Harvard, Yale, all the Ivy League schools, if you're cookie cutter, especially now, if you play the cello, if you play a musical instrument, you will stick out
Hmm.
as much as the star football player. They're recognizing that everybody, including Albert Einstein, plays a
Yep.
musical instrument. Why is that? Well, no one really seems to have that quickly as an educational defense,
Hmm.
but I got it. I got it, man. I know how to explain it to administrators and parents when I go out and meet principals, who I tell the principal, "You have an orchestra program." Really? I didn't even know. Oh, I've been to the football. I've never been to a concert, Mom.
Right.
Oh
Yep.
my goodness, are you kidding me? The
Yep.
kid who's in the back of the second violin section or playing the clarinet, that kid very much could be the next Elon Musk, the
Right.
next, scientist.
Right. There's
So I
always an athlete of the week. Why isn't there a musician of the week or an artist
thank
of the
you.
week? You know?
Oh, that's a good one, Jason. I'm going to bring that up as a part of the school cheerleading. Here are the statistics. 24%, only 24% of high school students participate in the arts programs.
Really? Wow. I would have
Terrible.
thought it's higher. I would have. Wow.
And teaching music right before the pandemic, they did a survey. 24% of high school students participate in the music program. Of that 24%, this is where it gets really depressing: 13% choir, 11% band, 2% orchestra.
2% orchestra.
And when
Wow.
I saw that, yes, and in fact, I do know that of all the 10,000 plus school districts in this country, there's only 20% of them have orchestra programs. They have
Wow.
band programs, marching band, they have
Yeah.
choir, no orchestra programs. So we are even in a more minority shrinkage moment. And now with the diversity equation and conversation with our educational programs, do you really think they're going to hold on to a program that's not embracing the next 10 to 20 years of educating a child, of allowing diversity and the differences in culture be a part of the conversation?
Hmm.
Music. Come on, you and I know exactly that music is the perfect Indian music. Every culture, just like it has its food and its culinary experience, has its music.
Right.
And if we don't explore other cultures' music, then we don't understand the culture as much. And that's the new conversation. So, my teachers, you must open the floodgates because, by the way, you want that to be there too.
Right.
You are a diverse person. You interact the word with it. But once you get your instrument, do you stop that? You shut that off? Are you kidding me? That's where in our music classes where we can truly celebrate. When you hear Indian music, right, Jason?
Hmm.
You're transported directly to that beautiful culture. When you hear African music, when you hear hip hop, when you hear rock and roll, when you hear classical music from a specific era, whether it's the romantic era or the classical era, you are instantaneously brought into an environment that
Right.
is magnificent. You might not be your cup of tea, and maybe I might not listen to 2 hours of that, but as an educational classroom experience, Jason, we must. This is our job. Because when they go out in the real world, how awesome is it that they, oh, let's go to that Indian restaurant and I'm listening, oh, I heard this music in class.
Right.
And then your respect and your ability to really embrace other people who are different, bingo, we win.
Right. Now here's a interesting thing as you were talking though. I'm sure a lot of teachers, as with any profession, I'm mostly a writer, so I know the same thing with writers. How, teachers have a way they do things. They were taught their way. A lot of them have been doing it for multiple years. So how do you kind of break through their entrenched ways and how do you revolutionize them with your ideas?
Yeah, and that's been the biggest journey for me. I don't use the word challenge. I don't use the word difficulty. It's a journey that we're taking, and it does amaze me in the music world. I can understand in math, and by the way, a math teacher every couple of years has to relearn how to teach it.
Right.
Right? Science, English, because
Right.
there's a new way. We've
Yeah.
got, and by the way, you cannot say, well, I'm going to teach the math that we taught 50 years ago.
Right.
You're fired.
I couldn't help my daughter with half her homework because it's all different than when I learned math. They keep
Right.
changing.
Right. So why is it that with the arts that we don't have the same clarification?
Right.
We don't, and that's insane because we must redefine. And I do a lot of teacher training. I do a lot of in-school um, uh, residencies where we work with teachers, and I
Hmm.
do find the pushback of learning something new. Mark, do we? I don't know how to. If the math teacher was saying, "I'm not interested in," guess what? You're out of there, man.
Right.
So I think that the oversight of the art supervisors and administrators overseeing, and I've worked with some wonderfuls who really get that they do the teacher training. You must learn this
Hmm.
because your orchestra class 20 years ago was 400 kids, and now your class is 20 kids.
Right.
Guess what? We're going to just remove the program
Right.
because of its antiquated system. So when I work with teachers, I really talk about that this is a benefit not only to the future of your students, but it's a benefit to you as a creative thinker. Are you a creative thinker? Are you, Mr. or Mrs., a creative thinker in your classroom, or are you regurgitating what we've been teaching, not just for a couple of years, we're regurgitating for hundreds of years.
Right.
This is the way it's done. This is it.
Yep.
That's the box. You have to be in this box, Mark. We spoke earlier. No box for me, man, because the greatest things in the world of humanity are people who break the box,
Absolutely.
hands down, hands down. And that exists as much in art as much as automobile industry, technology. It's all works in the same way. When Sergeant Pepper's came out with the Beatles, it was a landmark watershed moment
Hmm.
that brought us into the 70s with Led Zeppelin. And yes, we've got to finally to Britney Fox, your favorite band.
Hey, I've seen them live like 4 times. So
Right, I remember you told me that. Even they were as they were had the poofy hair up and they had the
yep,
hairspray. That's an important part of being a musician, hairspray.
absolutely.
Uh, but in art, it's equally important. We revere it, but it takes a little bit longer. Now, you're looking at the Metropolitan Opera, you're looking at leadership of the New York Philharmonic with symphony orchestras and museums. And I've spent time with people who claim to me that it's better that we put the symphony orchestras into a museum to protect them.
Hmm.
And I don't, I understand that. I
Right.
get that. But a kid who's into hip hop and heavy metal, let's say, also should be exposed to Beethoven and Mozart and Stravinsky, and you can absolutely show the connection between those music styles really easily. And if you don't know how to do that, then you're failing as a teacher.
Right.
So we're dealing with a very, very interesting moment, Jason, that I'm hoping that we rise up. And we're planning big things this year with a tour,
Hmm.
with residencies where we're going in town by town by town with my band, and we're going to be doing performances and talking to the community, not just the school, activating who's in your community.
Hmm.
Well, we have this really interesting African American neighborhood that we never are able to access for some reason. There's the music that the African American community has given us for the last 150 years is the definition of American music. So
Right.
why aren't you talking about bringing in that element of diversity into your orchestra program? Well, I don't know how to. You should find out. There's something called YouTube, and there's
Right.
something called Google that you can actually teach yourself and you can learn about it. You must be part of the solution and not continue the problem that we're having with antiquated educational system.
Absolutely. And it seems like now is really kind of the perfect time in a way. I mean, besides the internet, the digital revolution, social media, it seems like there's just a lot more musically, there's a lot more freedom of style, expression, genres than there was, just say 30 years ago.
Yep.
It really, probably, I bet you could say there's probably a next evolutionary step coming pretty soon.
I'm the proverbial delusional optimist. Forever and ever. I'm so proud. I live in the clouds, man, and I love it. I don't like reality at all. Alternate reality is where I love to live.
Yeah.
And what we're dealing with right now is something that's a little bit more serious than it was 50 years ago, which is technology.
Hmm.
Technology 30 years ago, I mean, cell phones, apps,
Right.
social media has really been new. And what we've been seeing with the scientists of the internet is that obviously this has grabbed the attention beyond any other activity that we've ever seen with not only the kids, with you and me.
Right.
My phone is, when I have a text coming from a client or a project, man, I can talk to somebody immediately. I
Right.
can immediately go on Instagram. So, oh, I need to do this too. That's a good, So I'm totally immersed in it, despite my and the, you know, I, it's a lesser of two evils. I prefer phone, and I prefer one-on-one. But the
Hmm.
social media as a musician and an entrepreneur is critical. If you're not on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok,
Right.
you're nothing. The internet scientists, whoever they are predicting that in the next 10 to 20 years, students in schools will have zero motivation to master a musical instrument.
Really.
When they can take their phone
That is
and
depressing.
press a button and I can make music. Here, I pressed one button. I don't have to master anything. I can push buttons.
Right.
And by the way, I push buttons too when I'm working on my music. I'm on my computer. I'm
Hmm.
not writing it by hand.
Right.
I'm working with Finale and smart music. I'm using technology very much so. So it's not an anti-technology stance. It's about the most basic human form of mastering something that's real.
Hmm.
That's this, not this particular instrument, but
Hmm.
some type of instrument, because we know that with our digits, brain, ears, a physical instrument does things that no other technology can do. We all know
Absolutely.
that, but they are predicting in 10 to 20 years that our music programs will become irrelevant, and they will not have that. And
Wow.
that we have to make sure that our musicians, and Jason, a lot of my thing, my bag, my ictus
Mhm.
is I am a musician. I'm a performing musician. I practice every day, and I'm going to get in your face and I'm going to show you what I can do instantaneously with the unpredictability of sliding my bow accidentally and turning that into a musical moment. When you're pushing buttons, you can delete.
Right.
In a live performance, unless you're running tapes, which is already happening. In a
Right.
live performance, hearing a musician be real, human, is critical. The human element of mistakes and uh, accidents.
Hmm.
Miles Davis was really into accidents. And Steven Tyler, who's a good friend of ours, I love it when he was working on a new practice. He told the producer, he said, "Get me in trouble.
Really.
That's what I want to get me into trouble musically, because that's where new stuff, new
Right.
ideas will happen. And if it becomes too perfect, where you're pushing a button, you have an entire symphony, you just push this button, and you're gonna.
Right.
There's not that element of humanity will be leaving us more and more, and I have no clue. So we as
Right.
musicians, my brother included, who's a brilliant cello player, someone needs to hear that in a live setting and see the power that has been with us for 5,000 years.
Hmm.
The history of music has always been that power.
Hmm.
And the Foo Fighters just played Madison Square Garden last week. Oh, I could see the Foo Fighters on YouTube. Oh no, if you see them live, man,
It's a totally different
right?
experience.
And
I've, I'm sorry, go ahead.
with rock, jazz, and hip hop, there's really an unpredictability. Who knows
Right.
what's going to happen? But unfortunately, our traditional museum experiences with symphony orchestras, we don't want accidents.
Right. Want perfection. Well, I've heard bands live that I didn't like and I love it. But then when I listened to their album, it didn't really do anything for me. And
Yeah.
vice versa. It's just the live experience is just so much better. And I think you're right on the head. Perfection is not as interesting as human trial and error sometimes. Human just being human, I
Yes,
guess is the way to put
and
it.
TikTok, you can hide.
Right.
And
Exactly.
Instagram, you don't have to be that good. You just have to have somewhat of a weird personality.
Yep.
That's it. It's like what? That's the bar that we're dealing with is who's got the weirdest personality or the most
Right.
flamboyant or the weirdest clothes. I mean, it's really wild to see this. And I want to be part of the conversation of going, well, check this out, man. This is real. And by the way, right in the middle of the performance, there was a moment where I lost my focus. I lost my emotions. I lost the focus, and I went in a different direction that I didn't predict. And
Right.
you saw that too. And being a master at what I do, I can turn that detour, that unpredictable detour, all of a sudden can turn into a moment of discovery.
Right.
And I think that moment of discovery of not just the discovery of a new software, of a new app, but the discovery of our human ability to, I didn't know I could express that. I didn't know I could feel this. And the feeling and emotion is something that we still haven't been able to computerize. We
Mhm.
will.
Right.
AI is with us. AI is already delivering pizza with robots,
Right.
whatever. That I can deal with. But when I'm dealing with a creative expression, the unpredictability and ambiguity does not work in technology at all.
Hmm.
But ambiguity is the most powerful thing in a human experience. you're going to hear something that I hear at the same time, and you're going to love it, get goosebumps, and cry. I'm going to listen to go, yuck, I'm turning that off.
Right.
There is, believe it or not, a power to that experience.
Absolutely. So what do you think about, think about like past masters of music who've really pushed the creative envelope as we've discussed. What if someone like Paganini or Stravinsky, if they were playing today, do you think they would be keep playing classical music, or do you think would they be up at the musical buffet just kind of tasting and exploring everything?
Okay, here it is. You ready? New
Yep.
York Times, 10 years ago, quote unquote, if Mozart was alive today, he'd be working at Apple Computers. That
Really?
says everything.
Really?
That says everything as they were analyzing, obviously, the contribution that humans are giving to either, a traditional art form or something new.
Uh-huh.
These kids are seeing much more excitement and flexibility and uncharted territory. And
Hmm.
that's it right there, uncharted territory. If
Yes.
we don't share our kids the infinite possibility of expression, they're going to go to technology to find it. That's all.
Right.
Infinite possibilities with this app. Zeros and ones. That's pretty much your instrument.
Right.
Yet, on the other hand, to be able to share that with living musicians, that there's an unpredictability and the ambiguity is actually a power. And how do you teach that is really simple. It's called improvising. And
Hmm.
Beethoven did it. And so the great composers, the great musicians that inspire me, in fact, I'm reading a book on Beethoven.
Hmm.
Why would I have any interest in a dead white composer from Germany? I could care less. But I'm fascinated by somebody who struggled so much. And by the way, he was deaf
Yep.
for many years. It wasn't just the last year of his life. He was deaf from the Seventh Symphony on. And it talked about his immense struggles of relationships and how he was able to transfer that struggle into a viable expression that wasn't words. I mean, the
Hmm.
operas, of course, had lyrics, but the instrumental music, especially the slow movement in Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which just gets me so deeply. I have no idea why. It's just that bum, 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 bum. Working with Leonard Bernstein at Tanglewood, I watched him conduct that, and I was like, wow,
Really.
where did this come from? And this is another Jason thing about art. Where does this come from?
Right.
Steve Jobs had the same epiphany, and Elon Musk also. Where does this idea come from with connecting the dots of this and this and this? But
Hmm.
with music, there's something that's undefinable. Where did Beethoven come up with the Ninth Symphony melodies? If you asked him, and I've asked Eddie Van Halen before he passed away, where did you come up with that riff?
Yeah.
He has no idea. And
Really.
that to me is the power when you can't explain where something comes from in creativity. Man, I don't care how much math skills you have. If you have a Harvard doctorate in science, because in science you have to be able to explain it.
Right.
There's got to be data. There's got to be there's fact based on most of our lives. It's fact based,
Hmm.
and it has to be. Science cannot be ambiguous. Science got to be fact based.
Right.
But with music, fact. What's the fact here? We are redefining it every second of our day as we redefine the way we express ourselves. So as we get back to the conversation, Jason, about it, cookie cutter,
Hmm.
about mainstream people who need to live like other people and have no ability to express and explore their own personality and create something new. Those people will never feel the excitement, the scared feeling, because it's
Hmm.
scary. When you're looking at, the Mount Everest and you're about to jump off without a parachute,
Right.
that's really creativity at its most beautiful. But as you do it, every time you do it, it's the excitement of that thrill. And man, if you're not experiencing it, and you're a writer, I know writers do it too.
Right.
Where did E. E. Cummings come up with a book? How did Dostoevsky, any great writer of your fan that you're a fan of, where did this come from? Especially in
Yep.
fiction.
Yep.
Nonfiction is a different thing, but even great nonfiction can really be captivating.
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved back, a few hundred years ago and farther back, they would always say that was divine intervention or that special revelation that, as you were saying, these things just come to you. And that's, I agree with you. That is one of the most amazing things about being a creative artist, when that hits you and you realize it and you just block everything else out and you got to go with it because you don't want to lose it in the moment,
Yes.
you know?
And I demand that we do not name it.
Yes.
That's when we get into trouble. That's what I don't want to. I don't know, Mark. What is this? I don't know.
Yep. Just
That's
go with
and
it.
of course we don't know.
Right.
We have no evidence that if you look at that tree and you turn your head and you blink 5 times, that all of a sudden you're going to get Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
Right.
There's no factual data on what is this thing,
Right.
and that we need to keep pure as the unknown.
Right. So as I mentioned at the top, your list of achievements and credits is just astronomical. You're a rock star, you're a composer, an inventor, an entrepreneur, and yet, you give back. You do these education programs. You have a foundation. Why do you do that? You could just sit back and collect royalty checks and probably not have to work again. I mean, what motivates you to do what you do?
That's so important, Jason, the answer to that question. Because I did an interview last night with a rock and roll drummer who used to play with The Who,
Hmm.
world famous drummer. And I was on his podcast and I spoke about, and he was also, what's this thing about the schools? Why is that important? And even they don't understand about several levels of this experience. The obvious level of giving back is that kid, and we've experienced thousands in the past 25 years. We've generated millions of dollars because the profits of the concerts go back into the music programs.
Right.
I raffle off my violin that I sign in front of everybody like Stradivarius. This instrument in 100 years is going to be worth millions of dollars. Give us
Right.
all your money, because 100% of the profits of the raffle go into the music programs. So
That's
there's always
great.
an element of giving back financially, but the most important thing that I've seen is kids who are struggling.
Hmm.
And every kid, I don't care if you're the football captain or you're the cheerleader leader or whatever, you're struggling emotionally. Every normal kid is dealing with some kind of social issue, some kind of internal, and of course we've seen it in the last 20 years more than we ever have seen it, from anxiety to stress to self-image, confidence. Everything affects our ability to stand up tall and tell the world, this is who I am. I don't care what you think. I am not going to be distracted by that person over there that doesn't like the color of my shoes.
Right.
I'm not going to get distracted by that. I'm going to continue with my adventure of my own story. So when we're dealing with middle schoolers, we're dealing with 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and who are hiding.
Hmm.
And those are my favorite kids. The kids are in the front row, man. They're the alphas, I call them.
Yeah.
Got it, man. You know what we're doing. Great, man. Good. You're on my team. In 5 minutes, I get it. But that kid back there, and it's not just one, it's dozens of kids who are hiding from the world because they haven't figured out, and of course, God knows what they're dealing with at home.
Hmm.
We're dealing with a suicide rate like we've never seen it before. These kids are struggling because our emotions, Jason, our emotions combined with a brain that's not functioning properly wreaks havoc on somebody's life that they may never recover from. And with music, if I'm a math teacher, I can't go off on a tangent in my math class about the emotion of math. There's no emotion in math.
Right.
In baseball, we got to throw the ball that way to the batter. We can't throw a football in baseball. We can't bring a golf club to baseball. There are set rules in most of our lives, but what should not be set in rules is our creativity and our emotions. Well, you have to behave this way, Mark. What? No, I am not interested in that. I'm going to behave the way I feel with tremendous respect to others. If you want to do that thing and I don't want to do it, applaud that you're going to do it. I am not going to make judgments on you. So when we're dealing with younger students, that to me is the epicenter of our work, because that kid ends up to be the Steve Jobs, ends up to be the Beethoven, can very much end up to be, because they're somewhat withdrawn. And as you know, with creative thinkers, we sort of isolate ourselves anyway,
Right.
especially writers.
Yep.
Can you imagine writing with 50 people in the same room?
I can't do that.
Yeah, it's chaos, and you're not able to create your very person. You have to be
Right.
isolated. Painters, sculptors, and there is a community certainly with musicians and stuff where there's a lot of musicians, a small band. But the power of activating a friendship, an emotional friend. This is my best friend, by the way.
Absolutely.
And you're writing, like writers have it out a little bit better because you have diaries.
Yeah.
So I talked to the students about diary. Who writes in a journal? And a couple of them raised their hand. I said, that is what your music should be. A journal of how you feel. I'm really angry today, Mark. Well, guess what? Before you go out screaming to somebody and hurting yourself or somebody else, use your instrument. Play really aggressively. And I do these posts about my emotion. Today, everybody, I'm feeling sad. But instead of me being in the corner doing something destructive to myself, I play a sad melody, and then it becomes therapy, and then all of a sudden, I'm feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I need some of that. What button do I push for that, Mark? Well, actually,
Right.
it's not a button. Let's see, this is how you do it, and watch how we do it. The alphas that you're seeing, that the students that you're not friends with, they don't like you, you don't like them. Guess what? You're going to spend a little time in watching their behavior. You don't have to be them, but watch and emulate and learn from leaders who you feel are embracive of love and support, and that powerful model that we look at people and go, wow, that person is really going to change the world in a better way. Those are the kind of behaviors that we see in the music world, because when you master an instrument, people come to you like a magnet. And I tell these kids, we're pretty much magnets. You do not, as a person, want to be telling your story, and people running to the hills
Right.
in fear or calling the police on you. We have to be set up as magnets, and in music, man, if you're playing your instrument and people are running to the exit signs, that's not a good sign.
Right.
So how do we look at ourselves as these magnets? What do we do? Oh, well, you're playing really out of tune. I am? Oh, yeah. So let's tighten up that intonation. And your rhythm is really sloppy right here. If you tighten up that rhythm, the magnet becomes a little bit stronger. And by the way, smile. I'm not going to smile. I said, yeah. Your facial and your body language is everything in music. When you see Led Zeppelin and you see these rock and hip hop bands, they are not standing
Right.
solemnly in the corner. They're working the stage, man, and I love that. Activate, entertain. No, we can't use the word entertainment in this world. Oh, no. It's all about entertainment. These kids are on video games. That's entertainment.
Right.
And we're competing with that. So kids, this is your chance, because if you're sitting in front of your video game, and Jason, this is a huge problem. If you're sitting in front of your video game for 10 hours a day, and then you leave that game and you're seeking out stimulation on that level, you will never find it. So how do we do that? We do it with balance. Your parents, your teachers are going to create an alternate reality that does not include this.
Right.
Passivity. Passive entertainment to me, and of course, watching a movie is very passive.
Right.
I'm not interacting with the actors. I'm not going to Broadway and yelling at the stage. The audience has to be passive. But when you learn a musical instrument, you cannot be passive.
Right.
Because this is your moment to be on the stage. The spotlight is on you. What are you going to do? You're going
Hmm.
to start to cry? Oh, no, no, no. You're going to start to emote something. And what is that something that we emote? It's your personal story. Not Mozart's story, not Beethoven's, not Jay-Z's, not
Hmm.
Robert Plant's. It's your own story because that's much more captivating than the kid sitting next to you doing something that is not their story. Because
Right.
what our stories are is what separates us from cookie cutter. Everybody, your story, man. When we talked earlier about your life, man, that was totally different than my life.
Yeah.
And instead of me going, oh God, it sounds really boring, white picket fence and everybody looks the same in your world, that sounds disastrous. And then you say, well, actually, I had a moment in my life, an experience with this particular person, blah, 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 that motivated me to do this and differently. And all of a sudden, your story evolves into this magical moment where other humans go, I feel that too.
Right.
You know, when you were reading a story, you're a writer, you know exactly that power.
Absolutely. That's amazing. I don't think you could have encapsulated everything any better. Music is just everything. I
And
just
that's why
find,
it's important, Jason, to
it's so important.
be around these young people.
Yep.
Because I'm telling you, a kid, and we see it a lot, who gets on the wrong track, he
Hmm.
gets on the wrong, and I never even knew humans were so susceptible, and such a victim of persuasion, of negativity.
Hmm.
It's like, isn't it obvious that you're hurting this person? Isn't it obvious?
Right.
Am I really hurting? Oh, yeah. So, learning about how to react and interact with humans is the beauty of humanity. And when we don't interact, and of course, we don't need to talk about the world right now, which is extremely divided.
Right.
This is the perfect moment for us to go, you know what? Enough of this fighting.
Right.
Let's learn about each other. Let's have a conversation. Let's really talk about tell me about yourself.
Right.
And then you're going to go, I felt that way too. And boom, politics, religion is all pushed aside, and we're looked at each other as equals. And that's where I hope I see that in my lifetime.
Hmm. Wouldn't that be great? Well, we can only hope. But
Yes.
I think music is the great equalizer in a way that'll help us all get there. You were talking before about many different things, but one thing you said, talking about the power of music, of you just made me think of, if you're ever just driving in a car, you turn the radio station and a song comes on that you love, and immediately you're just like, oh man, I love that. And your whole day is different. Your whole day changes, is uplifted. Or if it's a very sad song, it can bring you down sometimes in a good way if you want to be, if you want to feel that emotion. But it's just amazing to me that music is, it's comforting, it's therapeutic, it's nostalgic, but it's just it can just be pure joy to play an
Absolutely. And
instrument.
as you know, with music therapy, with Alzheimer's patients, which is
Right.
devastating, you don't even know the name of your husband or wife or children. You have no clue who these people are, but you play a melody for them back in
Mhm.
high school, and they remember the high school dance and exactly that moment. Come on, man.
Right.
That's insane to
That
think
is.
that music and can add. So, of course, with music therapy, which is a viable career, actually, going to
Mhm.
hospitals and using music to heal, isn't that enough for
Right.
a administrator or a school district to say, you know what? This is the moment we need to elevate it and
Mhm.
bring, as you said, the musician of the week
Absolutely.
next to
Oh,
the athlete of the
I
week.
would love to see that. That's something I'd love to see in my lifetime, is musician of the week, or reader of the week, writer of the week,
Yes,
academic student of the week, for
yes.
yes, but
Of course, what's really cool about your series with me and my brother, my
yes.
brother is way different than me.
That will
But
be great.
again, the second he plays, I melt.
Yeah.
So I don't really care that he doesn't play. He's not. I'm not interested in the fact that he's not me or he's not this or he's totally himself, and there's a beauty. And I don't know if you can get him to play Friday and me play with him, or
Mhm.
sort of like as a call and response
I
thing.
would love it. Absolutely.
But it is interesting that we came from the same room with
Mhm.
two bunk beds for all of our year till 18, and we are completely different people. But the basic, of course, musicianship is just, he's one of the finest, far better musician than I am. Far better. Oh my God, he activates, because really traditionally, if you can activate something that's beautiful and traditional, the same notes that
Mhm.
Rostropovich and everybody, all the other cello players, but you're able to give it your own personality,
Mhm.
that's a different level. That I can't do. And that is a high level to attain,
Wow,
you
perfect.
know?
And then, boy, what a perfect segue. You must have been a journalist in a previous life. Perfect segue to kind of close it up here is, as you said, yes, we have my co-publisher, my partner here at Inside Cool, Chuck Shealy. He has interviewed your brother Greg individually, and we are
Ah,
also going, the four of us are going to chat as well and talk a little bit about the Wood Brothers growing up, the Wood Brothers Quartet, which is fantastic. I cannot wait to do that. And we'll see if we can get the two of you to play together back and forth. Would be fantastic. Thank you so much. So now for people who want to, of course, go out and buy a wood violin, buy your albums, look into more of the Electrify Your Symphony, sign up for your rock music camps and things. Where can they go? Where can people find more about you?
just doing any search on Mark Wood Violin,
Okay.
it just gets you to all of my platforms. My nonprofit is Mark Wood Music Foundation. Electrify Your Symphony is our educational program. I've got the Mark Wood Music Camp, MWROC, and we've got Wood Violins for my violins. I've got my solo career, and then I've got my film scoring, which is Mark Wood Music Productions. Yeah, at the end of the day, we pay our bills and we're happy.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And
Yes.
for teachers or school districts who want to look into the program and see if they can invite you over, those same websites as well?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely easy to find, and just contact. You can communicate directly to my assistant.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll have all of Mark's links as well. We'll have them with this video and with our story. Don't forget to check out our website, www.insidecoolmusicmag.com. Check us out, our social media, sign up for our newsletter, and make sure you give us a like here. And if you have any comments about this interview, any questions for Mark, or just your own cool thoughts, make sure you let us know. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks again, Mark. This was fantastic.
A pleasure.